Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here for the press conference for the Square. My name is Florence Elmosini. I'm a member of the selection committee, and I'm very pleased to introduce to the stage Ruben Östlund, the winner of the Palme Award. Well, let's hope we have a more comfortable press conference than the one we just experienced.
Yes.
I'm also keeping my eye for Terry Notary to know in case you want to molest anyone. We're just maybe going to ask a few questions to start. Last time we had your retrospective here when Force Majeure came out, and you were already talking about the inspiration of the Square, the installation, and talking about this. So can you maybe go back in time and just explain a little bit how you started the Square?
Yes, sure. Actually, the first time I was at New York Film Festival, it was 2011, and I was screening a film called Play. And Play was about really young boys that was robbing other young boys in the center of the city in Gothenburg, where I lived, and it was inspired of true events. And I read through the court files of I think it was 60 different occasions when these boys have robbed other young boys in a mall in the center of the city. And you can tell by reading the court files that it was very, very seldom that any adult tried to help the kids, and the kids didn't ask for help either. So it was almost like, the adults' world and the kids' world were taking place on two parallel levels. And I was talking to my father about this, and he told me the same thing. It became a scene in the film. He told me that when he was 6 years old in the 50s, his parents sent him out in the streets of the center of Stockholm, all alone, with an address tag around his neck. So they just put an address tag around his neck with the address to the apartment and sent him out on the street to play all alone. And it was so obvious when he told me that it's like an attitude change in society. Back in the 50s, you looked at other adults as someone that was someone that would help the children if they end up in trouble. It was like a social contract that looked different in these public spaces. And then if I look on how I raise my kids today, or the general idea about the social contract when it comes to the cities and things like that, you almost consider other adults as a threatening. So in this context, me and a friend of mine came up with the idea that we should create a symbolic place that maybe it's not like an art piece or an art installation. We were comparing it more with a pedestrian crossing. And we were thinking that, the pedestrian crossing is a kind of beautiful invention, really. With a couple of lines in the street, we have actually created an agreement that is very, very strong, that cars should be careful with the pedestrians. And our idea was to create a symbolic place where we should be reminded of our role as fellow human beings. And this symbolic place could, for example, be placed in a mall where there's a lot of people passing by, in order to make us aware of how we take responsibility for each other and the possibility to trust each other and things like that. So we're trying to remind us about the social contract, basically, that we thought needed awareness. So.
I mean, you draw a lot of personal experience for your film, and you develop from them, because I also believe the original story of the stolen cell phone is also something that a friend of yours experienced, and then you develop from there.
Yes.
Development consequences, and you focus really on the consequences of the action.
Yeah, I think that, many of the stories that is in this film is things that friends of me have told me or that I have experienced myself. For an example, the condom scene.
I didn't want to start with that one.
Okay, let's go back to the robbery then. No, but the robbery actually was the producer of Force Majeure. It's quite funny. She got her cell phone stolen. And she did exactly what Christian is doing in the film. She's tracking it with Find My iPhone, and then she was going, together with her mother, actually, out to the suburbs of Gothenburg with 50 pages or 50 printed papers with if you don't return the phone, we will send the police or something like that. And then she took the elevator to the top and put it in every single mailbox in this building. And I mean, what I always try to do is like trying to, you know, when a kind of stupid behavior is possible, and you create a setup when I feel it's also possible for me. I could also have done that, you know, in order to create an understanding for, you know, for the behavioristic perspective, not making it a character issue, rather changing the setup of the situation so we understand that this mechanism is actually possible for me also. So almost like a sociological approach to the thematic, rather than having the protagonist-antagonist setup of the films.
Okay, so now you can talk about the condom story.
Well, it was one of these nights I was in a bar, and then this woman comes up to me. No, it's actually a friend of mine that ended up in that story.
Yeah, it's always a friend, yeah.
Or in Swedish we have this like hemliga Molgan, that is a story, like a story character, like made-up story character. It was him. That was.
So, I mean, in your film, I see you as someone who likes satire, and obviously you have a very strong sense of humor, but do you pretty much use humor to judge like the West, the culture, the elites, like, you know, versus the rest of the people? You kind of make fun of everyone. But it's
a very humanistic approach, right?
Yes. You really, really have an eye for men, weak men, and weaknesses of men more than any other group of people. So is that something that you really like to? Are you inspired by just weak men?
Well, I mean, I think that's really when something interesting is happening. You know, when if you look at the opposite way around and you only are showing strong characters that is dealing with the actions in the film or the dilemmas in the film in a very heroic way and doing the right thing, then it's more of like an example that you should try to live up to. It's building culture in a different way, really. But and I think that I'm interested in making it possible to us to identify with the behavior that we maybe are not that proud of. And I mean, the reason that I have been interested in men, two main character in the last movies, is also because that I think it's very interesting to be a man these days. It's you know, it's almost like that there's certain kind of, I don't know if we are the first generation in a long time. I think they have happened before also, but nowadays you really are questioning your role as a man. You are looking at your privilege, and you're almost born into a collective guilt. And that position that you have, in which way are you actually contributing to keep being this patriarchy? This how do you say? Yeah, how do you fight against it? And you have a lot of you're dealing with a lot of things like that, I think. I mean, I'm a father of two. I live in a one each and week life with them when I'm taking full responsibility of them one in each week and things like that. So I guess for me it's trying to go close to myself and dealing what kind of ethical, moralical issues do I think that I handle in my everyday life. And I think that for me, if you look at, for me, Christian is not hypocritic at all. But I mean, he has an idea about society that is very humanistic, and he also embraces the idea about the square and these kind of topics that the square is lifting up. But he doesn't manage to live up to these ideals always. And for me, that's really where the breaking point, when it's interesting with what human beings are why they are interesting. You know, we are not an animal, and we are an animal, but at the same time we are like a rational creature that is trying to be civilized. And the conflict for us as a species really happens in the breaking point between being trapped in our needs and our instincts, and also at the same time trying to be fair to each other and trying to control those instincts and needs. So, and yeah.
Well, mine is not an animal, but it is. And when you do bring some animals in the film, some real and some who are playing animals. So can you talk about working with Terry Notary and that really amazing scene, the dinner scene when
Yeah.
he starts
Well,
using the animal?
first of all, I think that what I did to find Terry Notary was I was Googling on YouTube, actor imitates monkeys. And I found a beautiful YouTube clip of Terry Notary when he was doing like promotion for Planet of the Apes. Because he was doing like motion capture movements for Planet of the Apes. And he had his arm extensions. I've never seen that before, but suddenly you realize, the reason why monkeys is moving in that way is because their arms are a little bit longer than us human beings. You know, when you have seen other human beings trying to imitate monkeys, there's always something wrong, you know? But the arm extensions makes the body position like more close to a monkey. And what he did in that video, he was like saying, okay, this is a chimpanzee, and then he walked like a chimpanzee, and you saw immediately it is a chimpanzee. And then he said, this is the gorilla, and it's more stumpy, and like it's stomping the ground. And then he did the gorilla, and he did it so beautiful. So I mean, you could see directly how he, in a very, very technical, skillful way, as an actor, could imitate like a gorilla, a monkey, and an orangutan. And I mean, what kind of acting does have this direct approach? Even a kid can see that actor is the best one in imitating a monkey. But when it comes to acting like who's playing Hamlet and things like that, you need a lot of background knowledge. I mean, bringing down acting to imitating a monkey, then it's like comparable with soccer or with football. We have a relation immediately of how hard the performance is. So I have been I have been quite interested in that kind of acting for a long time, and I thought I have never seen one that is as good as Terry. So I called him and I said, "Do you want to be in the film as a performance artist?" And I tried to tell him what the scene was about, and then yes. And I can tell you something about the scene also that is quite fun. The aim of the film was that we should be accepted for competition. We were aiming for that in Cannes. And I loved the idea that, in Lumiere, when the competition films are screened, a tuxedo-dressed audience are sitting and watching another tuxedo-dressed audience being confronted by this performance artist.
I know, because I saw it there.
Okay.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty meta. I have another question. Since you mentioned Terry Notary, like you also worked, like Elisabeth Moss is really outstanding in that film. She doesn't have a lot of scenes, but she's great. And Dominic West playing some sort of Julian Schnabel character.
Yeah.
It's the first time you worked with an international crew of that sort. So is that a new direction for you that you want to continue? It was just happened to work really well in that setting of the film?
I mean, in Force Majeure, I also worked with Brady Corbet, that is a New York-based actor. But for me, it definitely. I was nervous about that because I was not sure that my instrument was sensitive enough when I was working in English. But so when I did the casting and I met Dominic and Elisabeth in London, and I was doing impros with them. I thought that they were so good, so it almost created a problem for me because I was thinking of having Scandinavian cast. But then I decided to go on that track that, the contemporary art scene can be international, so it works. And I really, really loved it. I loved it a lot. I think that for both Elisabeth and Dominic, it was a shock because I'm taking an average 40 takes or something. And I think both of them are more used to a TV production system when they do five, 6 takes, so they had to find a way of dealing with that. But I feel now of course you have so many more skillful actors to pick from when you're going English-speaking language.
So do you think you may continue in that direction?
Yes, I think so. But what is important, I think, when you look at The Square and Force Majeure and my previous films, I think you can feel or sense in a way that they are made in a Scandinavian context. And I think that is interesting also for a foreign audience, because you can tell there's some culture difference that you 100% can't place. What are they? And of course you are thinking a lot of the things are typical Scandinavian or so on. So I really want to try to keep that approach to the thematics and the topics that I'm dealing with. That I want to keep that like the Scandinavian look at the things, in order to keep the unique way of looking at the topics in the films.
Maybe there's some question from the audience. If you have anything, just raise your hand. Is there a microphone? Okay.
Hi, thank you for the film, it was great. My first question is about those two scenes with the monkeys, with the one real monkey and one that is not. You don't solve the questions of why the monkey is there in the first place, or how the last scene ends, right? How do you feel about not letting the public know why that monkey is there or how that scene ends? And my second question is related to Elisabeth Moss. I thought it was very weird that when she was asking for the condom, she was wearing a red coat, and it was very similar to the Handmaid's Tale coats. So I don't know if there's something there, but I just wanted to know. Thank you.
First of all, The Handmaid's Tale was not released when it was shooting. Sorry?
But Ruben can read the future too.
I was thinking that maybe she already knew that she was going to shoot.
I know, actually during the shooting, Elisabeth actually said that I'm wearing red a lot in the TV series that I'm shooting now. But I mean, the costume designer brought up this, and I thought it looked beautiful in the room, so I said, go for that one. I don't care about the TV series. So, and the thing then with the monkey, I mean, I think that, one thing that I wanted to do was, when you have built a contract with the audience, what kind of film that you are looking at, and you get a little bit secure in that as an audience, I love when you put in an element that is like breaking that contract and make the audience, hey, wait a minute, like there's a chimpanzee coming into the apartment, like it's completely normal. Because then anything can happen in that movie, right? And I really try to think that I wanted to have a wilder approach and not being too, strict when it comes to the feature film format and things like that. So, I mean, that's one reason that I wanted to, do something that was unexpected for the audience. And then, I mean, the monkey theme in itself, if I'm going to explain it, then I think that we have used the monkey quite much when it comes to art and when it comes to photography and film like that, in order to mirror that a side of us humans is actually that we are animals. And I think there's something about, if you go to a zoo, there's quite often a lot of people standing around the monkey, the monkey mountain, or in Swedish you call it monkey mountain, where all the monkeys are sitting, and we are watching them like a very curious way, of course, because we are mirroring ourselves. But the monkeys are interesting since they are not ashamed of their instincts and their needs. So that's why, at least why I think it's super interesting to look at monkeys. That they're just doing, like, they are following their instincts and their needs and masturbating in front of the whole audience sitting there without, like, people are getting shocked and don't know how to handle it. And in order to mirror that human being is like an animal, we shouldn't forget that.
Hi, first of all, loved it. The film really seems to enjoy satirizing modern art, and I wanted to know what your stance is and where the film falls into that, in particular with relation to the comments on viral YouTube videos going for shock value and surprising the audience and that whole culture.
What was the first question? It was...
just how the film satirizes modern art, that being a part of it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the first, the text that Elisabeth Moss is reading to Claes Bang, or the Elisabeth's character is reading to Claes Bang, the exhibition, non-exhibition. That's actually a text that I stole from a professor on the university where I'm a professor in film. So that professor, he's like a professor in fine arts, and he sent out this because there was like an event that was happening one day at the school, and I thought that was extraordinary, interesting, and funny, that text. So that one is just like completely stolen straight off, and I mean, I think that this kind of theory and idea about theory that in many ways is really, I mean, how do you say? Can you say corporate bullshit? That it's a way of protecting your position, and I think that the students that are in this school, they have a huge problem with that, because first they are trying to theorize about their work, and then they are starting to create the work, instead of going on intuition and starting to create something like that. I think this problem is more in Europe actually than it is in the US. But the other part, I mean, I think it's quite beautiful, you know, the art scene, that in Sweden, when this film was made, or before we started to make it, they embraced the idea about the square. And if you have an invention or an idea on how you, for example, want to improve something in society, or the idea about how we should create a better society, or a way of thinking out of the box, the art scene is actually the arena where they can embrace these kind of ideas. And I mean, the square exists now in 4 cities, in 2 in Sweden and 2 in Norway, and they are considered like art installations. And without that concept, would it be possible to build these things in order to erase the questions that we wanted to erase with this symbolic place? So I have a huge respect for that arena, but I think quite often it's not used in the right way. It's very conventional, it's like a ritual. It's a very hard thing to exhibit things in the white cube in order to make us raise new questions. And I think a little bit that the contemporary art scene is stuck in the same idea about art as when Marcel Duchamp put the pissoir into the museum, you know. At that moment, it provoked a lot of questions. Today, it doesn't provoke any questions anymore if you put the pissoir, if you do like that. So it's the way that we are exhibiting the art that many times are the problem. So, yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I've noticed that your films often have a very ambiguous open ending, a kind of zero ending, and I wondered for this specifically if you could speak to why you chose that for the square.
Thank you for asking that question about the ending, because I love talking about the ending. There's a Swedish poem that have inspired the ending. And the poem is called Playing Marbles. And the poem is about a boy that have 50 marbles, and he plays towards someone that have 5 marbles. And of course he wins the 5 marbles immediately, because statistically it's very, very hard to win if you only have 5 marbles. And the poem is about this boy playing and winning the 5 marbles, and he's like really, really proud, walking away from there. And you know, I won the marbles. But then when he gets to his house, he regrets himself. And he thinks that was not fair. So he's trying to go back and find the boy because he wants to give the marbles back. But he can't find him. And when the poem is written, then it's like the subject of the poem is an adult man. And he still thinks about that was not fair. And now he can't pay back for the thing that he have done, and he have to live with that guilt feeling. And I love the idea about creating an ending, you know, when you have a possibility to do right, or to like trying to correct what you have done wrong, and you don't take that moment, you don't do it in that moment, and then when you wanted to do it, that the possibility is over. So he's not there anymore. And that guilt feeling is also something that I think is interesting. You know, that is of course very culture, how do you say, connected to the kind of culture that you're living in, if you feel guilt about that or not. And it's a beautiful thing to feel guilt about that, I think. And I wanted the daughters now, then when he can't reach the boy, I wanted to say apologize to the boy. I wanted the daughters to see their father in this moment and realizing, suddenly have a new point of view on their father. And seeing him like he's actually, he's a human being, or he's, like one of these memories you have when you're seeing your father cry for the first time or something like that. I was aiming for something like that.
Swedish poetry is beautiful.
Sorry?
Swedish poetry is beautiful. Is there any other question? Someone here?
Hi, thank you. I love this, and I also love your other films. And I think they're really memorable because you always start in a safe place, like a family vacation or, art gallery, and then you take us through this really difficult journey. And I wonder if you can speak about cinema as a safe space. And is that the only, the reason we can really enjoy these kind of shots is that we know that we're safe. So the people sitting in the dinner table think that nothing is going to happen to them because the animal won't do anything, right? So this is why it's so shocking when he actually touches the woman or trying to rape the woman. And I wonder how can you, so you're aware that, you could never break the fourth wall. This is a film, so we are going to feel safe. But still you want to make us feel, that the ground beneath our feet is shaking. So how do you do that? How can you achieve that? And is that something you can only achieve in the movie theater? So maybe watching this on a small screen on my iPhone or laptop would be different in that regard.
Okay, like the thing about the fourth wall then, or like the idea about both like sucking in the audience in a like identifying with the characters in the movie and then push them out of the and start to reflect on what they are seeing. I guess that's what you are aiming for a little bit, or
yeah, and taking us out of the comfort zone.
Yeah, but I think that I can only say what kind of scenes that I have been inspired of when I was like a film student and when I started to look at fiction films. Before I started with fiction films, I was shooting ski films, so the first fiction films that I really looked at was when I was in film school in the 90s, in the mid 90s, and I think that one scene that really struck me and that really like hit me with a full force was the subway scene in Code Unknown by Mikael Haneke, where I felt I'm in that subway right now. I can identify exactly the way that he has like placed the camera, and the camera position is me turning my head back, looking on something going on in the back of the tram or in the back of the subway. And I was really drawn into that, also because of the real-time aspect, I think. That you don't cut in order to, highlight certain things. You have to experience the real-time aspect of what's going on and feeling that, the power of real-time aspect that I really think I have tried to use in many of my films. So I think it's really, that makes it also, of course, you're put up to a challenge as a director if you're working with the real-time aspect, because as soon as there's someone that is not authentic, you feel it immediately, and then you can't cut. So you have to create a real-time aspect shot that works from the beginning to the end. And that, for me, like creates a certain kind of quality that is much more striking and that affects me more. And what I wanted to do in this film was like combining the idea about the real-time aspect in some scene and sometimes have the possibility to go up in a more dynamic tempo where I can give the audience energy again to go into another part where I'm using the real-time aspect.
Yeah. Do you think there's a difference between the movie theater and
And looking at it at home.
Yeah, left off.
Yes, so what I really like about the cinema is, of course, that and that's what I think that we should build, the cinema culture in a way that we are looking at things together that actually I have to approach the content in a different way. When I'm at home, then I don't have to care about the content really. But if I watched it together with someone else, then the content is like something that I have to reflect on. And of course it can be a collective experience that gets much stronger because you're looking at it together. I definitely think so. But I have had a strong experience of scenes like the Haneke movie, also alone. But of course there's something about watching in the cinema. I think that, if you look at the culture of cinema, I think that the most important thing is to build the culture of cinema. I think if every director in Sweden and in Europe, that have public funded money, if we were obligated to go to 10 different cinemas in Sweden, for example, on the countryside, and present our film and do an event in order to build the culture of cinema, the idea about looking at things together, that would build the culture of cinema. But now we are like hoping for making a fantastic movie that will bring back the audience to the cinema. That's the wrong way. We have to build the idea about going to the cinema. And maybe that's a sidetrack, but still it's connected, I think. Yeah. And the other question was?
I mean, just about how do you do it in a safe environment. So cinemas and museums are safe places. Like, this is why we can watch car accidents or terrible things. We can watch blonde babies blow up because we know that it's fake. Or so how do you escape this risk of telling us a story that will move us and will have meaning and will stay with us despite the fact we know it's just a story and we're still safe.
I think it's connected to what I was talking about, the real-time aspect maybe, and at least for me. And also about the sound, in which way you're dealing with the sound. I mean, very often if you look at a movie with a lot of violence and they put sound on it, I feel it's not to make it more scary, it's actually to make it safer to look at it. To really tell it's fiction, So you have scary music on a situation that maybe would be even more scary if it was no sound in it. You're making it fictionalized. So the sound is, of course, also very, very important to play with if you really want to make something drawn into something and being affected about it, I guess. So maybe that's also an answer.
I think we have time for one more question. Yes.
First of all, I want to tell you and thank you for an absolutely brilliant career, because it's not only this movie, it's all your work, it's your body of work. I'm very impressed about how you were able to go to the most conceptual and sophisticated place, which is like the art galleries and the world of dealers, and how the finance work, and touching, the most essential part of a human being, and how animals we are, how crazy we can react in front of situations that we don't have control. I would love to ask you, how was your experience to touch art in the way you did it? Because I just feel that the entire speech of how society works through your vision is so brilliant and very, very intelligent. But did you have an experience maybe with artists, or how's your background?
No, okay, my background in the art world, I don't have any background really in the art world. I was approaching the art world because we were invited to an art museum in Värnamo to do the exhibition about the square. And at the same time, they built the first public square in, the symbolic place in a public square in Värnamo. And that was the first time I was doing an art exhibition. And so I must say I don't have any really strong relation to at least the contemporary art scene. My mother was a painter, so I have some experience of my mother being a painter, of course. But I think that art scene looks quite different with the gallery aspect of it, and at least if you compare certain things about it. So I would say that my experience from the art world comes mostly from being a professor at this university, and then also doing the exhibition. And when we did exhibition as we did in Värnamo, we also used this element, that the audience had to push a button when they were entering the exhibition. So they have to ask themselves if I'm a person that mistrust or I trust. And the one that pushed I trust, they had to go in one entrance, and then they get to this next sign where it says, leave your wallet and your cell phone here. And it was kind of beautiful because it was a big gallery. And this old lady taking out her purse and putting it down there, and then they are going into the exhibition hall or the gallery, and then they all are always, aware of my cell phone and my wallet is over there. Mm-hmm. And there was a big pile of everybody put the cell phone and the wallet in that spot.
Where was that?
So that was a museum called Vandalorum. It's actually the same architect that have built Pompidou. So it's a very beautiful museum, but a kind of small museum. I hope I answered your question.
Well, we have to wrap it up because we need the theater. But you'll be back tomorrow night to present for the premiere in Study Hall. And
Yes.
we're opening the movie here on October 27th, and I think you'll be back too.
Yeah.
So thanks to Magnolia Pictures, and great to have you here.
Thanks for
And looking forward to
coming in.
tomorrow night and more stories.
Thank you.